Joining us today on Title Unboxed is former 2008 WBC and WBA super lightweight champion and current WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO, and IBO welterweight champion Jessica Caskilla McCaskill, along with her longtime trainer and owner of Body Shot Boxing, Rick Ramos.
Welcome to Title Unboxed. With more than 40 years of experience in the fight game, our host, Doug Ward, will be covering every corner of the ring as we get comfortable between the ropes. We'll talk with both the lesser knowns and the legends, discuss boxing's rich history and current state of the game. We'll also look at today's latest innovations, equipment breakdowns, and insights you won't uncover anywhere else. Join us now as we take a look inside Title Unboxed.
Rick and Jessica, thanks for joining us here on Title Unboxed.
Well, thanks for having us.
Well, it's awesome to get to sit down with a successful Midwestern fighter and trainer. Guys, fighters from the Midwest get such a bad rap, and you're not only successful, but, a world champion.
It's good to represent the Midwest, but at the same time, part of you kind of leaves that behind and starts thinking more on a global level, especially when you get to this level.
Yeah. Rick, why is it you think Midwest fighters get such a bad rap? I mean, you've been in Chicago your whole life?
Yeah, my whole life. I've been in boxing since I was about 10 years old. No, probably like 11 years old, and I'm 45 now. Yeah. So, I think, I don't know what it is. I've always wondered what we were lacking. And you're right. At least Chicago definitely gets a bad rap, and, a lot of other small towns do as well, but I don't know what it is actually. I don't know. I feel like Midwesterners they get stagnant and stuck in their groove, and they're not really willing to adapt to change, and they're just kind of maybe just hard-headed. Yeah, maybe like a flashy pad work type style. And maybe, I don't know what it is, but, I could tell that New York and California definitely have a stronghold on it.
Yeah. Well, Roger Mayweather had a whole monologue about why he thought the best fighters came from the Midwest. And he had a whole list of, Ken Norton, Tommy Hearns, Joe Louis, Archie Moores, I think was from St. Louis, the Spinks brothers, Henry Armstrong. There's a long list, and they kind of get brushed under the rug. But I guess Jesse McCaskill we can add to the list, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so only 7 fights into your career, you jump in and you're in with Katie Taylor, who was kind of the darling of the, at least that promoter's roster. How did that come about? And I always feel like fighters, we've talked about it several times on this program. I think sometimes fighters learn as much or more from a loss than they do a win. So talk to me about the fight and what your takeaways were from that fight.
This was a very interesting situation, just getting this whole fight together. I mean, this was really the first time that Rick put the hammer on the nail when it came to social media. I mean, he's always been in social media. He did like stories and things like that before, like, how people go live. He did that on YouTube, just like recording videos of his fighters back in like maybe early 2000s before it was like hot. And so he was always a mogul in the social media area. And that, honestly, Twitter is what got me the fight. We had started out with, whatever kind of fights that we could get that were maybe on my level or better. And I was passing those tests every time. And I just kept telling Rick, every time he brought up a name, I would say, I'm ready. And there was a younger guy that played rugby here in Chicago, and he was from Ireland. And he would ask me about Katie Taylor. I'm like, who is Katie Taylor? I don't know who this girl is. And he said something about the Olympics in Ireland. And I kind of brushed it off. And then, so that was kind of the first time I had heard her name. And then there was some article that came out, and she just very, with a lot of audacity, said that nobody wanted to fight her and that she called 20 girls. And I don't know if that was a lie, and her promoters made her say it. And if that's the case, shame on her. And, if that was really the case, which I don't think it was, that just made a bigger stance for me. Like, I was like, I'm not scared. I'll do it. So I was like, I'll fight her. And Rick said, you took on Twitter and was like, you didn't call us, and put his phone number on Twitter. And that's kind of like a no-no. You don't put your public information out there. And he put his phone number on Twitter. And from there, I think it was like you started getting connected with some media from Ireland.
Yeah, like Casey, shout out to Casey Gavin. He was, I think he was an intern at a newspaper over there. He just started. And he was working for, I think, the Irish Times back then. He called me when I tweeted this. He called me within 8 minutes, and he's like, "Hey, you want to do an interview?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, I don't know if it's going to get posted, but we could try. I'm like, "All right, let's do it." And then the next day, the kid from Ireland who was working out at our gym, he's like, "Hey, you guys are in the newspaper in the Irish Times." And it was like, after that, it was like one thing led to another, and that was it. That's kind of how we got the fight.
Awesome. Well, you said, I'm ready, no matter who he puts in front of you. That's kind of the mindset you have to be a world champion, don't you feel?
Definitely, because, things get switched up, whether it be the fighter or how a specific fighter fights or the weight class or what you're fighting for. I've had numerous occasions where things get switched at the last minute. And if you just know that you're ready, if you're mentally strong and you're confident in yourself and you put in the work in the gym with your trainer and you trust your team, then it doesn't really matter. I mean, I've had fights, 2018, we were going to fight a girl in 135 weight class. And we were said yes, because we hadn't gotten anything that whole year. I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong, whether it was the shows got canceled. There was like a hurricane in the Bahamas and that show got canceled. It was the craziest thing ever. We had about 4 or 5 fights lined up. And some of those, we were just trying to be on the B side of it just so we could stay active.
Right.
And, for that fight, we had agreed to fight a 135-pounder and got a phone call maybe a week or two right before the fight and said, well, how would you like to move up to 140 pounds for the WBC and fight Erica Farias? And again, I was like, let's go. So you just have to be ready, because if you're not, the opportunities that could be waiting for you will pass you by.
Yeah. Absolutely. Rick, you touched on something, social media, although it has its pitfalls and it certainly there's a downside to it. It's crucial in today's game. Your website's very polished. Your podcast is well put together. Your social channels are popping. That's important, isn't it? I mean, that's what part of the fight game. You have to be involved in that to be part of the fight game anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I tell everyone, and you can't just be a boxing coach nowadays. You can't just teach a kid how to throw 1 and 2. And now you got to manage your own kids. You got to be self-employed. You got to have your own LLCs. You got to know social media. I post stuff on social media and we get phone calls immediately now, and I kind of, you kind of got to poke at people to get them to notice you. And you kind of, unfortunately, people only notice negative attention sometimes. Sometimes we got to step out of character once in a while to get the fight, but it's worked for us. And we kind of set the trend, years back. 2015, we almost tried to get the Ronda Rousey fight, Jessica versus Ronda Rousey, and then she got knocked out by Holly Holmes. So it was like one thing, like we were on it way before everyone. It's just, maybe we were building our social media and we weren't 100% up to par on how to do it, but we were definitely making noise and people were noticing. Not a lot of people, but some people were noticing.
Yeah. Well, as much as people hate the YouTubers, in the boxing world, I mean, there's something to be learned from that. And plays along the same lines,
No doubt about it. They bring in their own clientele. It helps out the promoters. It helps out boxing as a sport. And, it helps out your money. If I have, let's say if I had 1 million followers on Facebook or on social media combined, like I think promoters will be like, yeah, this kid can promote his own fight. This kid can sell his own fight and he can bring his own eyes on top of their eyes that they bring to the table. So that increases your money. So I recommend that every amateur starts building a platform, and they're amateurs. Don't wait till you're pro, because by that time it's a little too late.
Yeah. Well, promoters, managers, all those guys definitely look at that as part of the complete package. Can this fighter sell tickets on their own without us doing all the work?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big name promoters. I won't mention any, but they weren't able to adjust during the pandemic. They didn't have any social media platform. They had no really internet platform at all. They were just like, kind of the sell their tickets to the local town, and some other people would buy tickets and show up. And those promoters, those B-level promoters, they fell to the wayside. Now, if you don't have a social media platform, you're pretty much out.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. I mean, you even look at the UFC, during the whole pandemic, they did the Fight Island thing, and ESPN had nothing else to talk about. So it was all about them and the little bit of tidbits of sporting action that was going on. So they probably grabbed a chunk of the market during that whole thing.
Yeah, when Jessica was supposed to fight Cecilia Braekhus in the first fight, that fight got canceled, and we didn't know if it was going to be pushed back 2 weeks, 2 months, 8 months. So we created our own documentary on YouTube, and it was called No Days Off. And we documented what it's like every day in our gym. And, with not just Jessica, it was Jessica, myself, all of our amateur and our pro fighters, and the drama that we all deal with. It's like a dysfunctional family sometimes. And, people getting thrown out of the gym, new people showing up in the gym, people flying in, hanging out with us. It was crazy. And it was a great show. We got a ton of views. Had it not been for the pandemic, we would probably not have gotten that many views. I mean, we were doing really well.
Yeah, you absolutely. You got to be creative.
Yeah,
Jessica rolled her eyes when you said drama in the gym, by the way.
There's always drama. There's always drama. I try to keep to myself and keep my nose clean and just follow all the rules, and you just never know what's going to happen. So, but those platforms are so important because that also is a way to teach the fighters, how to be on camera, how to speak during interviews, how to photograph properly. So it's like, if you have your own platform where you have the photographer, the videographer, the editing, the lights, the camera, the microphone, then you don't have to wait until someone else does it. And then it might not look as good. You don't have time to polish. So we are able to do that in-house.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like, it wasn't like a stage. There was nobody directing it. It was straight live, very little editing. It was pretty raw, and it did really, really, very well. And we were shocked on how many actual famous fighters watched it. They're like, man, all that drama happens at your gym. I'm like, yeah, there was no acting. This was like crazy drama,
Well, look at TV. It's all reality shows. So that's what people are looking for. They want to see behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they only see Jessica fight. They don't see her at home. They don't see her dogs. They don't see the drama of sometimes, Jess and I bump heads once in a while, and sometimes we bump heads with other fighters and throw people out and bring in new people on us. The younger female fighters in our crew, now are starting to date. So we had drama there. And then we had girls getting thrown out of the gym because, they were focused on other stuff during the pandemic and not what they were supposed to. It was just so much. It was a great experience for all of us. And it was, it helped catapult our platforms and our profiles, I guess.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So Jessica, you brought up winning the WBC super featherweight title from Erica Farias. What did you learn from the Katie Taylor fight? What adjustments did you make either in your training camp, strategy, your approach? What did you learn from that fight that you turned around then and won a world title off of a loss?
I get that question a lot, and I think that we did everything that we were supposed to for the first fight. And if I had to go in and do it all over, I wouldn't change anything. I think our team did very well for the first fight. And so for the second fight, we just kind of built on the workout and built on the strength and conditioning, which you should do as a fighter when you're starting to either move up in weight class or just become stronger and faster. You feed that. You don't stay stagnant, how we kind of mentioned before about how some fighters just stay stagnant. They don't change anything. They don't advance. If I can run a mile in 10 minutes, I'm going to shoot for 9, then I'm going to shoot for 8, then I'm going to shoot for 7. And that's kind of how our strength and conditioning and workouts have evolved over the years. So we added different elements to our strength and conditioning and to our boxing workout. And we've always switched out sparring partners here and there. A lot of guys come through, whether they're pro or whether they're a national amateur. We need power, we need speed. And that's just kind of what we did for this next fight. And it was in Chicago, it was in my hometown, my new hometown. So I couldn't disappoint.
Do you think being on the Katie Taylor stage was the biggest one you'd ever been on? Do you think having that experience just as a fighter better prepared you for the next time out?
I think all of those experiences will definitely help a fighter. I mean, even from, we had a pretty terrible locker room in London. The floor was slick. I shared the locker room with a couple of guys, and it was just kind of very random. And so just not letting that bother me and still being able to perform the way that I did. Yeah. That's kind of the mindset, the things that I tell the other fighters, like, don't let anything get in your head. Don't let anything derail you. Don't let it bother you. Just stay focused and do your job. So it just kind of solidified that whole feeling.
Yeah. You bring up sparring. So how does that work for you guys? Do you have trouble getting sparring in that central area, or do you bring it in from other places? Is that an issue, or no? You have pretty good talent pool to pull from.
I let Rick handle it all. So
yeah, I think it's pretty easy, mostly easy now. I think it's always been easy. I think I'm really good at like picking out the right people for the right fight. And I think, my reputation in Chicago is pretty solid. So I think when I call someone, they show up. So I don't think it was difficult. I think the only thing is like the people that we brought in were younger, faster, but also a little irresponsible, like, showing up late, maybe couldn't make it because they didn't have a ride. And I'm like, come on, guys, like, I'll send you a car. You know what I'm saying? I need you here. So I think
buy you a bicycle.
That was probably, anything. I'll send someone to go pick you up. It was like those little kid kind of issues. You get those, strong, fast, young teenagers. And sometimes they don't understand the level that we were experiencing at the time. So, sometimes
like a lot of the local people were a lot more casual about it. Whereas Rick always told me, after your fight, save money because you're going to need it for something. Yep. So we started flying people in. We knew people from Louisiana and other places. And so those people were like, I'm here to work. I'm here to get rounds. They would spar 2 and 3 days in a row, not necessarily with me, but maybe, with some other gyms, because we would expose them as much as we could while they were here.
Yeah, I was shocked by everybody's work ethic. As soon as people got off the plane, I would give them the day off. I fly them in at 8 a.m. I'm like, they're probably going to rest. And then we'll spar. They get off the plane. They're like, "Let's go." And I was like, "Oh shit, sorry." Yeah. But no, and I was like, "Oh," so I was like, "Oh wow!" Like they want to fight. So I'm like, "You guys don't want to eat or anything?" They're like, "We'll eat after. Let's go right at it." So
that's awesome.
I appreciate that. That was really amazing. And for me to answer what you asked about the Katie fight, for me, the number one thing that answered for me was that Jessica belonged on that level.
Right.
I kind of like, I didn't know if I belonged on that level. I wasn't sure if Jessica belonged on that level. You believe it, but you don't know it. Right. So, a lot of Tony Bellew, scored, he was unofficial, commentator, and his unofficial scorecard was a draw. So like things like that, what gave me confidence and gave obviously Jessica confidence. But once I knew that she belonged on that level, I think, it made everything a little bit more easier. And, very much like the Fernando Vargas versus Felix Trinidad fight, where Fernando lost that fight, but in a lot of ways he won that fight because he got so many fans after that fight for not quitting. And that was kind of like, Jessica didn't get knocked down or anything, but, that loss was a huge win for us, on so many different levels, So
when you compare the resume, of a amateur fighter we had gold medalists who had 300 some fights, and then me who had less than 30, it was like, if there's ever a next time, she's going down.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you bring up a good point though. Believing and knowing, there's just a little bit of difference in that, 100%. Having that belief versus having gone through the experience.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
And I think we didn't fight for 8 or 10 months after that fight. We didn't get the Erica fight.
Yeah, till October 2018. So the Katie fight was December 2017.
Yeah, so 10 months. I mean, in that 10 months, we trained for, like Jess said, so many fights got canceled, but we were literally training for 10 months straight. Yeah. So we were ready. And when she fought Erica, she looked night and day from the first Katie fight to the Erica fight. It was like a whole other person, even to myself. So, once Eddie saw her perform, he was like, oh, wow, like, okay. And then we won, and then, pretty much the rest is history from there.
And what he says all the time is, he says, you don't want to miss certain things about training, or you don't want to be lackadaisical about certain things because let's say if we spar every Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, and if I miss a day, that's probably close to a mini fight because we're sparring 6 to 10 rounds, and that could be considered a fight that you could have had, and that's more practice for you. And so, that 10 months of nonstop training, nonstop sparring, I probably had like 20 fights if you think about it, and so of course I'm going to look completely different from, the Katie fight to the Erica fight, but that's just the way that he runs his training and runs his gym.
And I'm a math guy. Like I was just telling someone yesterday in my gym, I'm like, yo, this is a numbers game. I used to trade stock options for the biggest banks in the world. And I'm sitting there with clickers counting punches. And I'm like, yo, your punches are down 40, they're down 40 punches a round. I need those up. We got to get that up. We're looking at 120 punches a round for us to throw 65, 70 punches in a fight. So like, I'm literally counting. Your numbers are low. Let's get them up. And I'm counting rounds. I'm counting punches when we're doing mitts. We're doing 10 rounds of mitts a day. We were doing a lot, for every fight since. We got better every fight since. And Jessica's looked dramatically better every fight since.
Well, everything you're doing in the gym is creating a habit. So if you're doing it half-assed, guess what's going to happen in the ring? I mean, that's just part of it. And, I tell everybody, I think that's what separated Mayweather from everybody else is that he was always in the gym. He was never out of shape, never spending time losing weight or, cutting weight or trying to get caught up to, that level. He was probably not in fight shape all the time, but could definitely, was never out of shape.
That's definitely a good point. Cause we had one of the issues that you'll see in our No Days Off documentary was we had a great young national female fighter and she had weight issues. She was, 180 and we needed her for the Cecilia fight. And she was just so big that I couldn't afford for Jess to get injured because of her like being too heavy, pushing her, falling on her. Yeah. So you're right. You're 100% right. It doesn't like the way I run my gym is like, hey, when it's Jessica's fighting, everyone focus on Jess. If it's an amateur or a pro, everyone focus on them. And that's our focus. And the focus moves around constantly. And, everyone gets to be the top dog. And then when you're done fighting, you still got to come in, take a couple of days off. No one gets a week off. Everyone takes a couple of days off and they're right back. I'm not saying they're sparring right away, but I need them in the gym. Yeah, they're helping. Sometimes when Jess is done fighting, she's helping me run sparring for the amateurs, for some of the other pros, while I'm doing mitts with someone who needs it, who needs one-on-one attention. Yeah. So it's a lot, and everyone's involved. And I think every gym should have everyone involved.
That's a great team mentality.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So from there, after you won your first world title, 2 or 3 fights later, you move up to welterweight to fight Cecilia Braekhus, undefeated, a weight class above. What did you see in that fight that you're like, that's the one we want?
So that
because she had at that point she had almost 3 times the number of fights you had.
Oh yeah.
Actually, 4
I mean,
times.
in the pros anyway.
Yeah.
I think 4 times as many fights, but. That whole scenario, we're going to tell this story right now because that started 3 years before it happened. They had reached a buddy of mine from Chicago was her PR guy. And he called me and said, hey, you guys want to spar with Cecilia Braekhus? She'll fly you guys out, this, that, and the other. And Jess is like, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't think we do it. And she was kind of like, really? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. She might be sizing us up. I don't want it to get sized up. You never know. I just felt like if they were bringing us out, Jessica had already won a title. I'm like, she could be sizing us up to come down to 140. Yeah, 100%. So I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea. And then you kind of want to take it from there.
I met her after the Katie fight. I went to Vegas to watch Holly Holm and Cyborg fight. And she was there and I met her and we posed for a picture. And then I was like, I put my hand down, that's just the boxer's pose, And I put my hand down because I was like, if they take this picture, they could be looking at the size of my hand. I don't know. I was just like, really, It
all factors in.
Yeah. And so that was in December. She called probably after that for
like
sparring.
March or April. Probably.
And then before the Erica fight, we had already had a conversation, a negotiation about being her last HBO fight. Mm-hmm. And so this is before Matchroom. This is like, they're going back and forth.
Tom Loeffler had actually called me through a PR person that I know from California. Hey, Tom Loeffler wants to call you. And I was like, okay, can have him give me a call. He calls me. He's like, hey, Rick, are you interested in, Jessica fighting Cecilia at 144? I think that was the initial offer,
Oh, really?
and the money they came in was super aggressive. And I was like, well, this is a real offer. This is a real fight. It's not far away. This is 144 pounds. I'm like, why would they give us 3 pounds off? Why would a world champion give up 3 pounds to a challenger? I thought that was foolish right from jump. I'm like, yeah, why would someone do that? So then I said, he gave me the money numbers and I didn't respond. And then the money grew and then the money grew and then the money grew. And I was like, holy shit, we need to make a decision. So then I called Eddie Hearn and I said, hey, I got an offer from Tom Loeffler to fight Cecilia on the HBO show, blah, blah, blah. And then Eddie called me, 5 a.m. our time, I'm like half asleep. I'm like, hey, what's up? And he's like, what do you want? What do you want to do? And I'm like, I want Jessica to get signed. I want a multi-fight deal. He gave it to us. And then we passed on the Cecilia fight. And then we fought
Erica and then Anna Sanchez and then Erica rematch. And then we were, I don't know how that came up. The Cecilia.
Yeah, they had.
Cecilia.
Yeah, so we fought. We had the WBA belt. We had the WBC belt, and then I can't remember exactly what we had to do. This Erica Farias fight, and I was just like, ugh, the second one, and I didn't really want to do it because I just didn't think it was worthy. So we did it because it was it was in our contract. We honored it, whatever, and then I felt like we need something exciting. 140 was cool, but nobody was really talking about the unifications. I don't even know who had the other belts, but I think they were vacant. It was just like a situation where it wasn't going to be easy for us to get undisputed at 140. So I went back to Eddie and I said, hey, let's go revisit this Cecilia Braekhus fight. And I had saw her fight Victoria Bustos. She didn't look good at all. And I was like, man, she's not strong. Bustos is really a 135 pounder coming up. I'm like, she's not knocking her out. I'm like, let's just see if I can get this fight again. So I hit up Eddie. I said, hey, offer the fight back at 145, give him a pound back. And Eddie Hearn was like, I don't think they're going to go for this. And I said, man, they offered me the fight at 144. Right. Offer them at 145, see what they say. And then boom, they took it like minutes. And I'm like, we're going to shock the world. That's it. Because I'm like, she's not aggressive. She's not strong. And maybe one or two people, and I say this respectfully, one or two people from Matchroom believe that we could pull it off. I'm not sure if Eddie even thought we could pull it off. And no, I know he didn't, because he was like, he asked me, he's like, you really think Jessica could beat Cecilia? I'm like, without a doubt. And he's like, okay, if this is the fight you want, I'm like, yes, give me this fight. And then, we just beat her. We beat her, I guess, it was amazing.
It was a shocker for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, obviously the rematch, and, we wanted to put a stamp on it. So Jessica barely hit the heavy bag in training for the second fight. We did 10 rounds of mitts, probably 6-7 days a week, and sparring. I mean, we did working out 2-3 times a day. I mean, Jessica looked great for the second fight and blew through Cecilia in the second fight. Yeah.
So what was the difference? What did you see from the first fight? What takeaways did you have that you were like, okay, I can make this adjustment. I can do this.
I think, I don't know. I personally thought the combinations were there. We needed to be cleaner. We needed more reps. Yeah. And that's what we did. We didn't just barely hit the heavy bag. Like I said, in 10 weeks, 12 weeks of camp, like she barely hit the heavy bag, and we just focused on mitt work and accurate punches and combinations. And, her percentage was 18% for the first fight. And I think for the second fight was
at least double, maybe.
I think I want to say it was 33%. So we definitely increased the connect percentage. Yep. So, I think, and we literally threw the same amount of punches. I think it was like 490 punches in both fights. So, it was huge for us. And, there was little things that Cecilia did, like before the round starts, she would come to the center of the ring that we would tell the referee about. Hey, watch the elbows. Hey, watch her coming out so far before and then the referee was on it. So we took away all of that. We did our homework for that second one, even more so.
For me, it was more so just being able to see, she was just kind of mentally weak. I think she had been pampered for so long, and people had put her on this pedestal for so long. And I am rough. Like I am rough, rugged. You know, when we're fighting, there ain't nothing pretty about it. People tell me I'm awkward and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And I connect my fists to their face. And, you know, that's the whole point. So I just realized that, you know, she was used to a very boxer kind of style of fighting. And I'm a brawler. I'm a brawler at heart. And Rick has given me boxing skills. And sometimes I forget those boxing skills. But, you know, I just knew that, you know, I could outwill her. And, you know, I felt like even stepping in the ring the first time, that showed it for the first fight. And then the second fight, I just like pushed it to the max.
Yeah. And you know what, actually, you made me just think of this right now, actually, like before the Katie Taylor fight, let's go back to the Katie Taylor fight. I was like the night before the fight, I was like, text all the coaches. I'm like, yo, everybody to the lobby. We went to the lobby. I'm like, how in the, are we going to beat Katie Taylor? I didn't know what my game plan was. And I thought about it the night before. So the morning of the fight comes, and I said, Jess, I got the game plan. She's like, okay, what are we doing? I'm like, this is going to sound weird. I said, it's going to sound very weird. I said, hit her after the bell. If she holds you, throw her down. Like, and she's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, make her uncomfortable. She's such a princess, Katie Taylor. Yeah. She doesn't know what it's like to fall down and get dirty and like to get muddy and to, you know, she doesn't know hard work. She just breezes by everyone. And that was our game plan for the Katie fight. So we revisited that game plan for the Cecilia fight, because those two, they're pretty much, they want to look pretty in there and box and look the part. And we were just in there steamrolling that whole game plan. You know what I mean? And it worked.
Sometimes it's a fight.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
for sure.
Forget about boxing.
Those tactics work, and they work usually because you take that person out of their element. Where with Katie, like I didn't hit after the bell, but I didn't let her hold me, and I tried to pull away, and
point deduction.
She got a point deduction because she held my head down and hit me like in a headlock, and so that's very different from what you would think a fighter of her caliber would do. So point deduction. And then Cecilia, she continued to hold through the fight. I think Eric Farias did the same thing. She held throughout the fight. And finally, it just got so egregious that the referee took a point. So that's kind of something, part of my style is to throw you off and to make you get a point taken away.
Yeah, and it's worked on all three of those fights.
It's like a cherry on top.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely, when she takes you out of your game plan, Katie had a point taken away. Cecilia had a point taken away. Erica had a point taken away. And those three women never had points taken away in their whole careers. Yeah. So those are the things you make it uncomfortable. And usually people don't know how to react. You know, they're shell shocked.
Well, when you're 36-0, the obvious, you know, you were obviously the underdog, and you got to pull away that cloak of invincibility the first time. It kind of, you know, that leaves them a little exposed for the second time out.
Yeah, and you know what, too? And I said this, too, in a lot of interviews leading up to that fight. I'm like, if Jessica doesn't beat Cecilia Braekhus, I don't know anything about boxing. Because, like, in my head, and Abel Sanchez was in her corner, and I said, there's no way that Abel can look at me and tell me he's got a better fighter. There's no way. And when I said that, when Abel was in the room, he looked at me. He didn't know what to say to me. Like, Abel didn't know what to say to me, and I'm like, I think I'm right. I actually think he believes I have the better fighter. Yeah. And then I believe it showed up in the fights. You know, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
Awesome. What a great upset and second win for the cherry on top. Rick, let's go back to, and just for the coaches out there, explain, you said she didn't hardly hit the heavy bag for the second fight. Explain why you took that approach.
Well, because I felt like, you know, and I say this respectfully, but just hitting the heavy bag, like, I think when coaches put fighters on the heavy bag, they rarely really pay attention. You know what I mean? Like, I know I've done mitts with Jessica her whole career of us two together. I always did the mitt work, and I brought in another guy to do the mitt work while I watched. I wanted to watch Jessica turn her feet. I wanted to watch Jessica's delivery from the punch being so close to her face, letting it go, watching her feet. And sometimes when coaches do mitts, I know the coach wants to be the guy to do the mitts, but sometimes you got to look at their feet, and sometimes you can't see their feet when you're worried about catching punches. So I let someone else do the mitt work, a guy on our team. Shout out to Matt Hambrook. He's our heavyweight who did the mitts for her. And I just watched. And I watched, and we went over just the remedial basic. Hey, let's work on the jab. Let's work on the 1-2s. Let's work on the 1-2-3s, 1-2-3-4. Like, we went over the basics, stuck with it, pulled off the bag. I just think that even fighters, I mean, pounding on a heavy bag, they get a little bored, and you know, maybe they don't turn their feet. And like you said earlier, maybe like you said earlier in the episode, if you practice bad, you'll fight bad. So I wanted to watch Jessica throughout the whole training camp. And, I think the numbers prove that we were right by not, worried about we left the bag alone and just focused on shield, mitts, things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go back and follow the road that gets you to a world title. Jessica, you're not from Chicago originally. Belleville? Belleville, Illinois. Okay. Were you born and raised there?
I was born in Hobbs, New Mexico, and then moved to Belleville at a very young age. And then from there, my mom and dad got a divorce and things kind of went downhill. So around like the 4th grade, we were homeless and just kind of bills stacked up. And it wasn't really something that I really remember visually. I just remember like, the lights weren't on or the house was empty or we got McDonald's for breakfast in the morning, which, as a kid, you're like, oh yeah, that's great. But we listened to listened to like a battery operated radio while having the McDonald's. And so like when you go back, you're like, the lights weren't on because the bills weren't paid. We were eating McDonald's because we couldn't cook because gas wasn't on, And so at some point, we ended up moving out and moved into a Baptist church for several months. And, it's just one of those things as a kid that makes you grow up so fast. And it's not something that you could talk to other kids about. They don't understand. They don't sympathize with you. They don't know how to. And so it was just kind of like me and my brother and my mom and, trying to, make ends meet and trying to get back on top of everything. And, those are some of the things that I think about when it's like, training is hard or like, okay, I'm going out and I'm going to fight somebody. I don't have headgear on. It's like, I've had some of the hardest fights in my life. Like boxing is nothing, and I really hold on to that because it just really, solidifies to other people and lets them know that their hurt, their pain, their past is real, and that's okay. And it's okay to feel that. And it's okay to use that to excel in other things in your life. Don't forget where you came from. I think it's very important because if I decided to, be a silver spoon princess and forget my past, I probably wouldn't do as well in boxing, or I might not even be in boxing. And, so my whole journey is basically, about the schools that I went to during those times and the people that really helped me mentally and actually like donated money so that I could go to summer camp and things like that. Like those people I will remember forever because they just really kind of put a really big stamp on my heart during those moments. And so I give back to those schools now and I go back and visit, and those areas still aren't, as they're still kind of impoverished. And so I know what those kids are going through. I know what life is like in that neighborhood. And so I go back and I just let them know like, hey, I am one of you. Like we are the same and you can do whatever you want to. And, I've turned my life around, everybody, my whole family is doing so much better. But I think if we hadn't worked so hard together in those moments, we wouldn't have gone through the good stuff that we're going through now. So, eventually we moved into a duplex, and then eventually my mom got her own house. And so we definitely had a better lifestyle. And I just kind of, I think, took that, get better, do better, get better, do better. And I was a first generation college graduate. And now I have a scholarship at that college that people can apply for, the Jessica McCaskill Champion Fund. And that's going to help them with their college. And so I think
and you're in the Hall of Fame.
I'm in the SIUE Hall of Fame. Yes. I forgot about that. It's just like, it's almost like, getting through the hard times is not enough. Like I have to win, I have to succeed, and then I have to like outshine. And, I just want people to look at me and think like, holy crap, like not just like, oh yeah, she did it, yay, but like, no, she did it and then some, so I don't ever want to have a reason to stop like striving for greatness.
Well, there's a great lesson in that. You can use those experiences, those memories as an excuse, or you can use those as a motivator. And
Exactly.
And I'm sure you look back on it and it makes you appreciate what you have now and what you've accomplished even more so.
Yeah,
because it wasn't handed to you.
No, like I remember running around in shoes with holes in them, and now like I can buy as many shoes as I want. It's just kind of like, it's definitely a blessing. And it's just, I've stayed focused and I stayed humble then, and I want to stay focused and stay humble now.
So you're a shoe person? Is that what you're saying? You got a lot of shoes?
I train very hard. So I go through shoes probably every like 6 to 8 months.
Oh, boxing shoes. Okay.
Yeah. Like,
Well,
training shoes. I'll just buy some because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm stuck and my shoe blew out and it's like, so I have like a couple of pairs of shoes in my closet just ready to go because I want to be on top of my game always.
Hey, if you're training right and pivoting on your shots and all that, you should wear your shoes out pretty quick. They should last. That's your foundation right there. And you got into boxing in what, like a 2013, 14? And you didn't actually even get into it to box, did you? Weren't you starting it to just for get in shape and fitness?
Yeah, just for fitness, really, because I had graduated from college. I was like in my 20s and there wasn't really anything I could kind of do as, an adult. I mean, there's like kind of intramural sports. You can do like kickball or dodgeball or, random things. But I was always an athlete and really about that life. So I just started taking a kickboxing class. And there was a boxing coach in the same gym kind of across the way. So after my month trial was up, I decided I didn't want to have to stretch my legs and kick above my head anymore. And I transferred over to boxing. And it was just kind of like there were all these like little, steps that you could take. You start training and then you can go sparring and then you have an exhibition fight and then a real fight and then nationals. And, I don't think I ever thought about going pro. That wasn't really part of that. But really? I came from St. Louis to Chicago and found Rick's gym, which took like 9 months. I found him, again, social media. I found him on Instagram through a hashtag.
Oh, really?
And he was the only gym coach in Chicago that answered my call, my text, my anything. Like nobody else responded. And he was like, yeah, just come in the gym and we'll talk. And that's how I found Rick. So
I was going to ask that. Yep, I was going to ask that. There you go. Back to social media.
Yeah. So when I started working with him, he had me spar one of his fighters. And it was kind of like, an interview, it was like, it was like, here we go. I got to show him everything. Cause if I don't do this right, he's going to kick me out or whatever. And so we start sparring and I'm like, you should have seen me. I was definitely rough around the edges. I was just like wild, like in St. Louis, you box with your hands up here. You're very showy. It's a show me state. Yeah. So, I ended up putting her down. I hit her with a body shot and she gave me like a oof. And I was like, that's it right there. And I went back for a second and I dropped her and I just was like, I made it. And that's all I could.
You made the cut.
Yeah, I made the cut.
Passed the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then he just talked about, like, once we actually started fighting, he just talked about how fast he was going to move me. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if that was necessarily probably because of my age.
I think it was because I move fast in general. I like to do business real quick. Like if I like something, let's do it now.
Yeah.
And, maybe her age played a part in it too. But I felt like nobody, like as a coach, I was a younger coach and I felt like nobody fully listened to me. And I felt like she didn't really have anyone and I didn't really have anyone. So I'm like, it was a perfect match, perfect time. And I was like, we're going to do it the way I want. And I had felt like she was interested in doing it the way I wanted, or at least listening to me. And we did it that way and it moved fast and, it all happened so fast, Yeah.
And then one day he's like, so I think we're going to turn pro. And I was just like, all right. And this is after fighting a girl that I had fought. There's about 4 or 5 girls in Chicago that you could go round robin with each year. So this girl I had probably fought like maybe 3 times. And this last time I knocked her out in like 30 seconds. And so you could definitely see the progression of my training and everything. So it was time.
Yeah. And at that time, you got to remember, like, female boxing still wasn't that popular yet. Yeah. So like I told everyone in Chicago that I was turning Jessica pro, and like, I was kind of like laughed at, like there's no money in female boxing. There's, female boxing is a joke. And I was like, man, like, Jess, you better be for real, because like, I felt like I was the new guy in Chicago, kind of. Yeah. And, I opened up a gym on my own. I had parted ways with someone else and opened up a gym on my own. So the first person I turned pro was a girl, and everybody's like, look at this guy, and it just, now look at us, and now we have all the belts, so.
That's a nice thumbs to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of headaches, a lot of laughter, man. Oh, it's crazy.
But crazy. You won like 2 or 3 Golden Gloves titles 2014, 15, 2012.
Yeah, I won.
13.
Yeah, 2012 in St. Louis.
Yep.
And then I moved to Chicago at the end of 2012, but I didn't find Rick until the end of 2013. And so, yeah, then I won the Golden Gloves in 2014 and 15, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was 14, 15.
Yeah, and then after that, I turned pro in 2015.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really know the female landscape, so I'm like, we're gonna have to learn this like right away. I felt like there wasn't a lot of women, and you can fight 3 times and be number 4 in the world or whatever. So I'm like, this is gonna move. This is gonna move quick, And
it did, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, St. Louis used to be a hub for boxing. I don't know that it is so much anymore, but St. Louis used to be the town you hated to go up against.
Yeah. There's a lot of natural talent there. There definitely is. It was different dynamic for me because I was a lot older and I'm training with a lot of younger guys, and they're still eating like Twinkies, and it's like, man, we gotta weigh in tomorrow. And so you have that younger crowd, and sometimes when you're really trying to push what you're dreaming about, and they're just kind of like not really as into it as you are, it's rough to be around. But we were still a team and we still worked together, and I brought that same kind of mentality over when I came to Chicago.
Yeah. So what makes you two work so well as a team? Because there is obviously some magic there. What is it? Can you put your finger on it?
I listened.
You're coachable.
I said to myself, I will do everything that he asks me. And then if he's wrong, I will get to say, I told you so. And I haven't been able to say I told you so.
That. Well, that's a good position to be in.
Yeah. Not
it's
for
nice
her,
to be
not
right.
for me. But, I've always felt like I worked with a lot of guys, Jimmy Sandoval, Adrian Granados, a lot of guys who could have, in my opinion, should have been and could have been world champions. And I felt like they got us to a certain point of the career, and then they started listening to other people. So I think I was in a situation where no one would listen to me, and it was frustrating because I was a younger coach. I mean, most coaches are nowadays they're younger, but 10, 15, let's say 15 years ago, coaches were above 50 years old. Yeah. Now you see a lot of coaches in their late 20s, 30s. It's not that unheard of, but in 2005, it was unheard of when I started. So it was, I was a younger guy. So I would think I was 30 years old and I was coaching, and they would listen to me to just so far. And then after a while, they would just stop listening. And, the dads and the uncles and the aunts and the grandmas get involved.
Yeah.
See, she even knows when I need water.
they all become immediate coaches.
Oh, man. Coaches, managers, you've seen it a million times, right? So I just felt, like I said earlier, I was just like, I think I was in a situation where I lost all my fighters. Like what I thought was my best fighter at the time, he had left me. And, his dad kind of took over, and I let him take over. I said, I'm not going to interfere. I was his manager. You guys do what you want. He ended up getting knocked out. I'm like, that was a horrible decision. Mm-hmm. I let it go. And I'm like, great. Now I got just amateurs. And then I said, Jess, you want to turn pro? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And then it was just a perfect situation. I needed her. She needed me. I felt like I needed someone to trust me. And I felt like, in a way, in a respectful way, maybe she didn't have anyone that she could trust in the game. And she saw my work ethic. I still am in the gym every single day. I still am like on the phone screaming at people today, even today. It's all day. Jessica's going to be in the Creed movie. I'm arguing with people about more money. I'm arguing with people about getting Jessica a bigger deal, a bigger fight, a crossover fight. Like, my phone is nonstop, and she sees my work ethic. And I think, she's a worker. I'm a worker. We're both very extremely work-minded, career-driven. And I don't know, don't get me wrong. We're not 100% perfect, but I do think 90% of the time we agree, probably. Yeah. And that's a lot. I mean, 90% is a good number.
I think sometimes the hardest part is like when he says something and I don't know, am I willing to take that risk and listen or wait it out? I mean, sometimes when you have like two guys who are just like very bullheaded, and it's like, well, I don't think that's right. Well, I think it is right. And so they can't, agree to disagree, and they don't further themselves, it just stops right there. Whereas, for me, I didn't have people in my ear. I was the only person that I knew besides maybe two other people here in Chicago. I wasn't from here. And I did need somebody to coach me. And, I had kind of seen how things worked in St. Louis. And so I just gave him the reins and was like, do what you do. And every time he said something, I was able to see it. So if he was like, hey, be careful, people are gonna, they're gonna see you, you're new, they're gonna try to like pull you off to the side, ask you weird questions, say that you can come spar with them and, don't go anywhere without me. And it happened. People would say, hey, you should come here, blah, blah, blah. We spar on this and this day. Like, you got to talk to Rick. And then they would just drop it.
And you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy? I won't say who it is because he's super famous and him. Everybody knows him. And we were in California, let's say. And this guy was like, hey, Jess, come train with me. And Jess was like, you got to talk to Rick. And this is a guy who I idolized. Yeah. And I was just like, what?
Really?
He just looked through me and was just like, hey, Jess, you come here and train with us whenever you want. Yeah. Totally without regarding me or even me, even seeing me, pretending like I wasn't even in the room.
And he didn't include him in that part of the conversation, even though he was close enough to be included. And I was like, yeah, just call Rick. Yeah. Rick handles all of that for me. You have to go through him and then, we'll work something out. He's been by my side the whole time. And that's exactly where I plan on keeping him.
Yeah, some people just have they complete disregard for, but you bring up a word that's probably a key part of that magic you guys have, and that's just trust between any fighter and trainer. To have the trust to go, okay, I'm going to follow whatever your lead is, and just know that it's the right thing.
And there's a lot of things that we're skipping too, I lived in my gym to fund some of her career. I had a kid in high school and his tuition was $1,500 a month and I was trying to pay my bills. And I lived in an apartment where I would, work at the gym all day and I was just going to my apartment, showering and coming right back, 6 hours later. And, I saw that Jessica was putting up her own money to buy tickets because nobody would give us an opportunity to fight. We kind of bought our own tickets for a lot of fights back in the beginning. And so I knew that I can count on her to put up money of her own career. And I was trying for her not to do that, but I was putting as much money as I could at the time. And she was stepping up and matching it. So I think those things built trust and
sacrificing at the same level too.
100%. Yeah.
So you're 100%. In it as much as I am, and I'm in it as much as you are.
Right. Because, as a coach or a manager, you're the one always coming up with the, digging in your pocket and you're the one that's always coming up with this, that, and the other. And the fact that she was willing to help, that was the first time anyone said, well, I'll put up $750 if you put up $750 and we'll buy all the tickets. And I was like, you're willing to do that?
At that level, I didn't know anybody. I'm new to Chicago. There were a couple of people in the gym that bought tickets, but the promoter's looking at, how much money can you bring in? How many people can you bring in? So we just bought all the tickets. And we had, again, there was another patch in our life where we had rough moments. And it's okay, I've been here before. Mm-hmm. I know what this is like. We can make it through. And I told myself, I don't know if I ever told you this, but we had some really rough moments where we were talking about money. And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm going to retire him one day. We're going to get through this. I'm going to make good money and I'm going to be able to retire him so he doesn't have to work anymore.
That's awesome.
I retired last April.
Oh, congratulations. Good for you guys.
At 25
That's
years
awesome.
on a trading floor. At 25 years on a trading floor, I woke up one day, I'm like, yo, I'm out. I'm done.
That's it.
And that was it. And it's just that trust, man. I don't think I've ever had anyone trust me that much and be that loyal to me. So, obviously, I wanted to give her as much as I could. And I told her once too, I'm like, yo, the universe owes you. And I'm going to collect. Right. I'm going to collect from the universe. Yep. So we're going to get everything that you're supposed to get in life. And here we are,
And more. When you say you didn't have a template for building and marketing a female fighter, you've done a great job through social media and everything. Jessica, was there anybody you looked to as a young fighter, that female or male fighters, you were like, I dig that. I relate to that person?
No, I didn't. I mean, again, this was 2000. I started boxing in about 2008 and there just wasn't, everybody knew, the Ann Wolfs and the Layla Ali's and Christy Martin, but there was such a disconnect there because I didn't see a lot of it.
Different time and era. Yeah.
And so there wasn't necessarily somebody that I looked at to follow. I had a similar question to that before. And I said, I remember FloJo, she's a track runner.
Yeah.
And she just had like this style and grace and like charisma, and she just had like this big name, and she was from the African-American community. So I saw representation there, and I was like, I want to be like FloJo in some kind of way. I thought that was just amazing. And so if there was anybody, maybe I looked to her, but once I actually started fighting and watching tape, I'm a very old soul. So I'm a Vargas, I'm Tommy Hearns. Like Sugar Ray Leonard. Like I watch a lot of the older fighters, and that's the things I study. And why did they do this? Why didn't they do this? Did they have enough time to do this? I'll run it back on YouTube. I'll just double click while I'm on the treadmill. I just thought I had to be great, and I had to be the best that I could be. And I just wanted to push myself.
True.
Well, you bring up all the fighters that were all my formative years or formative years. Those were all my guys. So you mentioned Creed. You mentioned Creed 3. What are we going to be looking for in that? Where do you show up? Can you tell?
I'm going to be a commentator because I've started to do some commentating for DAZN, and they love the work that I put in. I was a communications major in college with a theater and dance minor, so I'm used to being in front of people and audience and talking. So the commentating came very natural, and they were like, you should totally do this. And so, Rick worked it out for me. So
yeah, so she'll be commentating, I guess it would be Apollo Creed Jr. But, she'll be commentating one of the fights and actually two fights in the movie. So it'll be kind of,
awesome.
Obviously we were looking for a boxing role, but maybe when I think he had a daughter in the movie. So maybe when his daughter gets older, just
Creed 4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rick always said that I'll just play myself in my own movie. So my working on that.
There you go. That'd be a good way to make your big splash.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing. All of this stuff is amazing. We got a chance to meet Sugar Ray Leonard. We were with Fernando Vargas a couple weeks ago at our fight. So it's just like, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Truly amazing.
Well, that commentating, the acting thing, those are great life after boxing careers to have.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's just great to have options. I definitely see myself in the gym and helping people train. I feel like Rick has a certain kind of like way that he trains, maybe like a certain genre. And I feel like I have a certain way that connects differently to people. And so I think that can definitely help. And with just the experience that I've had and the things that, that I've done, I think I can bring, some of that to the table and show people firsthand, why this is good, why this is bad. And just really, I've had other coaches before that train you to be like them. Mm-hmm. And like I had a very petite, maybe 130-pound coach. And, when I was in St. Louis, I was fighting like 140, 150, and he was trying to make me like him. And it's like, coaches do that. You really take that soul away from the fighter, and you're taking away everything that could be good within them. So I think good teaching skills to be able to help each fighter be themselves as well.
Yeah. You don't want to take away a fighter's natural inclinations. You just want to build and improve on them. Yeah,
he does. Even when I have bad habits, he turns them into like good results.
Positive,
like certain things where I would lean on a certain side. He was like, if you're going to lean that way, come up with an uppercut, so it works out. Do it right.
Yeah. Well, what a great time talking to you guys. I appreciate you taking the time for it. Before we go, I want to plug everything. Rick, you've got a website, your social media channels. Where can everybody follow you and keep track of what you got going on next?
You can find me on all social media platforms at Rick Ramos Boxing, and including YouTube, where we have some pretty cool documentaries, some behind the scenes stuff, and my gym, BodyShotBoxingClub.com. You can find us there as well. Jess?
You can find me at Jessica McCaskill everywhere, and you can check out the first mini documentary of Making McCaskill. It's on Amazon. I believe it's also on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
So we're just going to be adding to that IMDb list.
Yeah, the next show we have is the Road to Katie Taylor. So we're going to premiere that March 15th on my YouTube. So
great.
It's just us doing it live, and we're producing it ourselves, and we're doing everything ourselves. So
I love it.
hopefully, shout out to Netflix. Hopefully, you guys pick it up.
Right.
For having us, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
We'll keep in touch. You guys, I got to say, you're great for boxing, your talent, your personality, your humility, and you guys are in it for the right reasons, and that shows in all that you're doing and all your success.
Thank you. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, that means a lot to us, honestly. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you guys. Everybody keep track of Rick and Jessica and their next moves. Good luck, you guys.
Thank you to everyone.
Thanks. Thank you for watching this episode of Title Unboxed. If you're anything like me, you can never get too much boxing. So if you'd like to watch more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our Title Boxing YouTube page.